73 cents. That was the number Craig said out loud in a store full of people on a Wednesday afternoon. Not quietly, not privately, in the specific carrying voice of someone who had decided that policy required a witness. Sir, I'm going to need you to pay the full amount or put something back. Walter Gaines was 79 years old. He had a loaf of bread, a can of soup, a can of tuna, an orange juice, and an apple on the belt. The same things he bought every Wednesday. He'd been buying the same things every Wednesday for 6 months. He was 73 cents short because the veteran's discount card he'd been using every Wednesday for 6 months had expired last month, and nobody had told him. He stood at the register. He looked at his wallet. He looked at the belt. He was not going to cry. Walter Gaines had not cried in a very long time, and he was not going to start over 73 cents in a grocery store on a Wednesday afternoon. But the people behind him saw his face. And the cashier at Register 3 saw his face. And something happened in Diane's chest that she recognized immediately. Not from a policy manual, from the last time she'd stood in a line and watched something wrong happen and had done nothing and had driven home with it sitting on her like weight. She wasn't doing that again. She reached up. She turned off her register light. Subscribe if you're new, share this tonight, and stay with me, because what happens next is about all of us. Walter had a system. Not written down, the kind of system that lived in sequence, that had been built over years until it ran without thought. Wednesday morning, 8:15. The Fresh Mart on Carpenter Street, 4 blocks from the house he'd lived in for 31 years. He walked, not because he didn't have a car. He did, a 2009 Buick that Marcus kept offering to replace and that Walter kept declining to replace, because the Buick ran fine, and replacing things that ran fine was not how Walter Gaines had operated for 79 years. He walked because the doctor had said walk, and because the 4 blocks were manageable, and because somewhere around the second block, between the house with the blue shutters and the corner where the oak tree had been before the storm took it in 2019, his mind settled in a way it didn't settle anywhere else. He thought about things on that walk, sometimes Eleanor. She'd been gone 11 years, and he still thought about her most mornings, not with grief exactly, more like conversation. He'd tell her things. What Marcus had said on Sunday. What the weather was doing. What he'd read in the paper. She never answered directly. She was quiet in the way she'd been quiet when she was thinking, and then later he'd figure something out and understand that she'd been in the figuring. He thought about her on the walk. He thought about Marcus too. Marcus called every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time, 9 o'clock his time in Denver. The call scheduled around Marcus's kids' bedtimes with the specific logistical love of a son who had built his week around making sure his father had someone to talk to at the end of it. Walter never said, "You don't have to call every week." Because Marcus did have to call every week. Not for Walter, for Marcus. Walter understood that. He'd understood it since the funeral. Since he'd watched his son stand at Eleanor's grave with the expression of a man calculating how many Sundays he had left with the parent who remained, and deciding the number was not going to get smaller because of him. Walter loved him for it. He never said that either. Some things you just carried. The veteran's discount had been Marcus's idea, not Walter's. Walter didn't look for discounts. Eleanor had been the one who found them, clipped them, organized them in the little accordion folder she kept in the kitchen drawer. After she was gone, Walter had stopped using coupons because the accordion folder was Eleanor's, and opening it felt like opening something that wasn't his to open anymore. Marcus had found the Fresh Mart Veterans Program online. He'd called on a Sunday and said, "Dad, did you know Fresh Mart does 10% off for veterans? You just need to register the card." Walter had said, "I didn't know that." Marcus had said, "I'll set it up. You just show the card." 3 weeks later, the card had arrived in the mail. Walter had put it in his wallet behind his driver's license and his Medicare card. He'd used it every Wednesday for 6 months. He'd never thought about it expiring. Nobody had told him it would. He'd noticed the new cashier when he got in line, young. First week energy, the specific, slightly wide-eyed attentiveness of someone who was still learning where everything was and was trying hard not to show that they didn't know. Walter had been patient. He was always patient with people who were learning. He'd learned things late in life too. How to cook, after Eleanor. How to do laundry without ruining things. How to be alone without being lonely, which was the hardest thing and which he was still learning, if he was honest. He'd put his things on the belt. Bread, soup, tuna, orange juice, apple. He'd handed over his card. The cashier had swiped it. She'd looked at the screen. She'd swiped it again. I'm sorry, she'd said. It's saying this card is expired. Walter had looked at her. It's been working every Wednesday, he'd said. I know, she'd said. I'm sorry. It's saying, can I get a manager? She hadn't waited for his answer. She'd pressed the button. Craig had arrived in 90 seconds. Walter had watched him come. The purposeful walk of someone who had been called to handle something and had a method for handling it. Mid-30s. The new manager. Walter had seen him a few times before, moving through the store with the specific, slightly performative efficiency of someone who was aware that being seen working hard was part of the job. Walter had no particular opinion about Craig. He'd had no reason to. Craig had looked at the screen. He'd looked at the card. He'd looked at Walter. And Walter had watched him make a calculation. He'd seen that calculation before. Not in grocery stores specifically. In other places, over 79 years, in the specific way a person's eyes moved when they were deciding not which policy applied, but which person they were dealing with and what that person would accept. He'd seen it a long time ago. He'd hoped he was wrong this time. Sir, Craig had said, your veteran's discount card expired last month. The total without the discount is $13. 19. I have $12. 46, Walter had said. You're 73 cents short, Craig had said. Not quietly, not as information. As conclusion. Walter had looked at the bread on the belt, at the soup, at the tuna, at the orange juice, at the apple. I've been coming here every Wednesday for 6 months, he'd said. Same things, same card. I understand that, sir, Craig had said. But the card expired. I can't override an expired card. Can't, Walter had said, or won't. Craig had looked at him. Sir, he'd said, policy is policy. Walter had been in Vietnam in 1968. He had stood in places that made a grocery store on a Wednesday afternoon look like nothing. He had done things, seen things, survived things that 73 cents could not touch. He was not going to explain that to Craig. He was not going to explain anything to Craig. He was just going to stand here, with his bread and his soup and his tuna and his orange juice and his apple, and wait. Because Walter Gaines had learned a long time ago that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply not move. Diane had been watching since Craig arrived. Not obviously. She was running her own line, scanning items, making change, the automatic rhythm of a job she'd done long enough that her hands knew it without her. But her eyes had been on Register 1 since the button was pressed, and Craig had come out of the back with the specific walk she'd learned to read in 2 years. That walk meant someone was about to be told no. She'd seen it before. Not always with Craig, with the manager before Craig, and the one before that. The walk was institutional. It came with the title. She'd watched Craig talk to Walter. She'd watched Walter's face. She'd watched Craig say, policy is policy, with the specific, practiced neutrality of someone who had learned that neutrality was a form of protection. She knew that neutrality. She'd used it herself. 14 months ago. A woman in her line, older, confused, a return situation that had gotten complicated, and Diane had followed procedure, and the woman had left without what she came for, and Diane had driven home with it in her chest and had not been able to name what it was for 3 days. Then she'd named it. Shame. Not because she'd done anything wrong according to the manual, because she'd done nothing right according to herself. She told herself, next time. This was next time. She finished the transaction she was on. A man buying beer and chips. Tuesday energy on a Wednesday. The specific, unbothered shopping of someone who had nowhere to be. She gave him his change. She looked at Register 1. Walter was still standing there. The belt hadn't moved. Craig was still talking, or had stopped talking, and was waiting, the waiting of someone who had said the thing and was now letting the thing sit until the other person accepted it. Walter was not accepting it. He was just standing. Diane looked at the line behind Walter. 7 people. Some of them looking at their phones. Some of them looking at Walter. Some of them looking at Craig. All of them waiting for someone else to do something. She recognized that waiting. She'd done it herself. She was not doing it today. She reached up. She turned off her register light. The light going off was quiet. A small mechanical click, the kind of sound that shouldn't carry, that in a normal moment nobody would notice. In this moment, 3 people in her line looked up immediately. "Register 3 is closed," she said. Even, not loud. She walked to her bag under the counter. She took out her wallet. She had a 5. She had 3 ones. She had coins. She counted out 73 cents. She walked to register 1. She put the 73 cents on the belt next to Walter's apple. She didn't look at Craig. She looked at Walter. "I've got it," she said. Walter looked at the coins. He looked at Diane. She was 22 years old. He could see that. Not from her face specifically, from the way she was standing, the specific combination of certainty and slight breathlessness of someone who had just done something they'd decided to do and were now in the doing of it and hadn't fully caught up yet. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she said. "I don't need, sir," she said. "I know you don't need it." She looked at him. "I need to give it." Walter looked at her. At the 73 cents on the belt. At the young woman who had left her register and her line and her workday to put 3/4 on a belt in front of a stranger. He thought about Eleanor, about what Eleanor would say. Eleanor would say, "Let her." "Okay," he said. Craig was looking at the coins. He was doing the thing people did when something happened that their framework didn't have a category for, not processing, waiting for the category to appear. It wasn't appearing. "Diane," he said. "My line is closed," she said. "These customers can go to other registers." "Diane, you can't just, the transaction is complete," she said. 73 cents, cash, right? She looked at him. He looked at the coins, at the register screen, at Walter. The transaction was complete. There was nothing in the policy manual for this. "Ring it through," she said to the new cashier. The new cashier, whose name was Amy, who had been watching this with the expression of someone in their first week of a job who had just learned something the training videos hadn't covered, looked at Craig. Craig didn't say anything. Amy rang it through. $13. 19. Paid. Diane was walking back to register 3 when she heard it. The click. Register 5. She turned around. James Whitfield was turning off his light. 58 years old. 14 years at this Fresh Mart. The man who knew where everything in the stockroom was and had trained half the people currently working, and who had, in Diane's 2 years, said approximately 400 words to her, all of them practical. He wasn't looking at Craig. He wasn't looking at Diane. He was looking at his line. "Register 5 is closed," he said. "Sorry for the inconvenience." He didn't go to his bag. He didn't take out his wallet. He just closed. Diane understood immediately. He wasn't paying for Walter. That was done. He was doing something else. He was making sure she wasn't standing alone. She hadn't expected that. She'd expected to stand alone. She'd prepared to stand alone. Had made the decision knowing that standing alone was likely, that Craig had authority she didn't have, that closing her register without permission was the kind of thing that went in a file and stayed in a file. She'd done it anyway. She hadn't expected James. She looked at him. He wasn't looking at her. He was rearranging something under his counter with the focused attention of a man who had decided something and was now simply being somewhere. She looked at register 7. Patricia, 44, 11 years, the woman who brought homemade cookies on the last Friday of every month and left them in the break room without a note, was watching James. She watched James for a moment. She closed register 7. 7's closed, folks. Sorry. Then register 2. Then register 6. Not all at once, one by one, the specific sequential closing of people who were each making their own decision and arriving at the same place. The store got quiet. Not silent, the ambient noise of a grocery store continued. The refrigerators, the PA system playing something nobody was listening to, the distant sound of the stockroom. but the registers were quiet. All of them. And Craig was standing in the middle of it. He hadn't moved. He was still at register 1. Walter was still there too, his bag packed now, Amy having finished the transaction with the careful efficiency of someone who wanted to do at least this part right. Craig looked at the closed registers, at the lines that had dispersed, customers moving to self-checkout, some of them leaving, one woman who had watched the whole thing from register 4's line putting her basket down and walking to Diane and pressing something into her hand before she left. Diane looked at her hand. A $5 bill. For the next one, the woman said. She walked out. Craig looked at the registers. He looked at Walter. He looked at Diane. He opened his mouth. He closed it. There was nothing in the manual for this either. He was beginning to understand that the manual was not going to be useful today. He stood there for 47 seconds. Diane counted. Not deliberately. She'd found herself counting the way you counted things when you needed something to do with your brain while the rest of you waited. 47 seconds of Craig standing in a store with closed registers and dispersed lines, and a veteran who had finished packing his bag and was waiting with the specific, patient stillness of someone who had learned that stillness was its own kind of answer. 47 seconds. Then Craig did something nobody expected. He walked to his office. Diane watched him go. She didn't know what to make of it. James was watching too, from register 5, still closed, still not looking at anyone directly, the focused peripheral attention of someone who had decided to be present for whatever came next. Patricia was watching from 7. Amy was watching from 1. The store had the specific suspended quality of a place between things, not before, not after, between. Walter picked up his bag. He looked at Diane. "Thank you," he said. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm doing it anyway." He looked at the closed registers. At James, at Patricia, at the empty line. "All of you," he said. Not loud, to the store. James looked at his counter. Patricia looked at her register. Neither of them said anything. Walter nodded. He walked toward the exit. He was almost at the door when Craig came back. Craig was holding something. Not a policy manual, not a phone, a $10 bill from the petty cash box in his office. He'd walked fast. The purposeful walk, but different from before. Before it had been the walk of someone moving toward a situation. This was the walk of someone moving toward a decision they'd already made and needed to execute before they thought about it too much. "Mister." Walter turned around. Craig looked at him. At the bag in his hand, at the $10 bill. "I'd like to." "The veteran's discount," Craig said. "It should have been renewed automatically. That's a system failure on our end." He held out the bill. "This covers today and I want to make sure you're not out of pocket for our mistake." Walter looked at the $10. He looked at Craig. Craig was not comfortable. He was doing the thing anyway. Walter understood the difference. "The discount was 73 cents, Walter said. "I know," Craig said. $10 is more than 73 cents, Walter said. "Yes," Craig said. "So this isn't about the 73 cents, Walter said. Craig looked at him. "No," he said. "It's not." Walter looked at the $10. He looked at Craig. He thought about Eleanor, about what she would say. She would say, "Take it, Walter. Not for you. For him. He needs to give it." He took it. "Thank you," Walter said. Craig nodded. He looked at the floor, then he looked up. "I'm sorry," he said, "for earlier. The way I—" He stopped. It shouldn't have gotten to that point. Walter looked at him. At 34 years old, standing in his own store, having a harder conversation than he'd planned to have today. "No," Walter said. "It shouldn't have. Not absolution, not anger. Just the truth." Craig nodded. "Have a good afternoon," Walter said. He walked out. Craig stood at the exit for a moment after the door closed. Then he turned around. He looked at the closed registers, at Diane, at James, at Patricia. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. "Registers can open," he said. Not as a command. As an acknowledgement that they'd been closed for a reason and the reason had been heard. The lights came back on, one by one. The store resumed its ambient noise. Lines reformed. The specific ordinary machinery of a Wednesday afternoon grocery store restarting itself. Craig went back to his office. He sat at his desk. He looked the petty cash box, at the $10 that was gone from it. He thought about the conversation, not about the 73 cents. That part was simple, that part was over. He thought about the 47 seconds, about what had happened in them. He'd stood in a store where every cashier had closed their register, and the silence had been so complete and so clearly directed that he'd had two choices: double down or reckon. And he'd stood there for 47 seconds, deciding which one. He'd chosen reckoning. He wasn't sure what had made him choose it. He'd been thinking about his grandfather. Not because his grandfather was a veteran, he wasn't. Because his grandfather was 76 years old and lived alone, since his grandmother died and bought the same things at the same grocery store every week. And Craig had never thought about what it would mean for someone to humiliate him over 73 cents in front of a line of strangers. He thought about it now. He was going to think about it for a while. Diane was back at Register 3. The line had rebuilt. 5 people, the normal Wednesday afternoon flow. She was scanning items, making change, the automatic rhythm. But something was different. Not in the work was the same, in her. She felt lighter than she'd felt in 14 months. Not happy exactly. Not triumphant. Lighter. The specific lightness of someone who had put something down that they'd been carrying and hadn't realized how heavy it was until it was gone. The woman from the line, the one who'd given her the 5, had said, "For the next one." Diane had the 5 in her apron pocket. She was going to keep it there. Not as a fund. She understood that wasn't practical. As a reminder that there was always a next one, and that she now knew what she was going to do when it came. James came by on his break. He didn't say much. He put a coffee on her counter, the specific dark roast from the break room that she'd mentioned once, 4 months ago, that she liked. He'd remembered. "Good thing you did," he said. "You did it too," she said. "You did it first," he said. He picked up his coffee. He went back to his register. Diane looked at the coffee he'd left. She thought about what he'd said. "You did it first." She'd been thinking about it as Diane did a thing, and then others followed. He was saying something different. He was saying, the first one is the hardest one, the one that costs the most, the one that stands alone in the gap between the decision and the consequence. She'd stood in that gap. He'd made sure she hadn't stood there long. She understood now why that mattered. Not the gesture. Anyone could cover 73 cents. The not standing alone. That was the thing. That was what James had given her. Not the closed register, the company in the gap. At 4:30, Craig came out of his office. He walked to Register 3. He stood at the side of Diane's line. Not in it, beside it, the specific, careful positioning of someone who needed to say something and was trying not to disrupt the work. She finished a transaction. She looked at him. "The veteran's discount," he said. "I'm going to talk to corporate about the renewal process. It shouldn't expire without notification." He paused. "And I'm going to ask them about a grace period, for cases where someone doesn't know." Diane looked at him. "Okay," she said. "I should have," he started. "Craig," she said. He stopped. "You came back with the $10, she said. "That's what matters right now." He looked at her. She could see him deciding whether that was enough. She could see him deciding it wasn't, not fully, not yet, but it was where he was starting. "Yeah," he said. "Okay." He went back to his office. Diane turned her light back on. The next customer stepped up. She started scanning. 4 blocks. The same 4 blocks he walked every Wednesday, but different. Not the street was the same. The house with the blue shutters. The corner where the oak tree had been. The specific familiar sequence of a route he'd walked so many times, it had stopped being something he thought about and started being something he just did. The blocks were the same. Walter was different. He couldn't have said how exactly. Not happier, that wasn't the right word. Not vindicated, that wasn't right either. Something quieter than both of those things. The specific settled feeling of someone who had stood in a hard place and not moved and had watched something happen because of it. He walked slowly. He always walked slowly now. The doctor had said, "Don't rush it, Walter. You've got time." He'd said, "You don't know that." The doctor had smiled. "Fair," she'd said, "but don't rush it anyway." He didn't rush it. He walked his 4 blocks, and he thought about Eleanor, and he thought about Marcus, and he thought about a 22-year-old cashier who had put 73 cents on a belt and said, "I need to give it," like it was the most natural thing in the world. He'd been in the army for 3 years. Vietnam, 2 of them. He didn't talk about it much, not because it was too painful, some of it was, but that wasn't the main reason. Because he'd learned a long time ago that people didn't know what to do with what he'd tell them. They'd get a specific expression, the expression of someone receiving information they wanted to honor, but didn't have a framework for. And he'd have to manage that expression, which was more work than the telling was worth. So he kept it mostly to himself. Eleanor had known some of it. Marcus knew the outline. The details lived in Walter. He'd thought about the army today. Not in the store, after. On the first block. Specifically, he'd thought about a man named Thomas Reeves. Thomas Reeves had been in his unit, 20 years old, from Macon, Georgia. The specific wiry energy of someone who ran on 4 hours of sleep and strong coffee and sheer velocity. Thomas Reeves had saved Walter's life in 1969. Not dramatically, practically. The way things happened in that place, fast, without announcement. And then it was done and you were alive, and the alternative was very clear. Walter had never been able to repay him. Thomas Reeves had been killed 6 weeks later. Walter had carried that for 55 years. Not as guilt. He'd worked through guilt a long time ago. As weight. The specific permanent weight of something you owed someone who was no longer there to receive it. He'd learned to carry it. He thought about Thomas on the first block. He thought about Diane on the second. The connection wasn't direct. Thomas Reeves and a cashier at a Fresh Mart in Columbus, Ohio, were not the same story. But something in what Diane had done reminded him of what Thomas had done. Not the scale, the instinct, the immediate unthinking movement towards someone who needed something. Thomas hadn't calculated. He'd moved. Diane hadn't calculated. She'd reached up and turned off her light. Some people were built that way. Walter was grateful they existed. He'd spent 55 years being grateful Thomas Reeves had existed. He had a feeling he'd spend some time being grateful Diane existed too. He was on the third block when the woman caught up with him. He heard her before he saw her, quick footsteps, the specific rhythm of someone moving faster than comfortable to reach something. He turned around. A woman he didn't recognize. 50s. The look of someone who had been in the store and had left and had decided she wasn't done with whatever had happened in there. "Excuse me," she said. He stopped. She caught her breath. "You were at register 1, she said. "I was in line. I saw—" "Yes," he said. She looked at him. "I should have done something," she said. "Earlier. Before the cashier, you were watching," he said. "Yes," she said. "I was just watching." She said it the way people said things they weren't proud of. Walter looked at her. At the specific, uncomfortable honesty of a person who had driven out of a parking lot and turned around and caught up with a 79-year-old man on foot because she needed to say something to him. "What's your name?" he said. "Ruth," she said. "Ruth," he said. "You came back." "Yes," she said. "That's not nothing," he said. She looked at him. "It's not enough," she said. "No," he said. "It's not. But it's not nothing." She was quiet for a moment. "I have a father," she said. "He's 82. He lives alone." She stopped. "I don't know why I'm telling you that." "I think you do," Walter said. She looked at him. She looked at the sidewalk. "Yes," she said. "I suppose I do." They stood there for a moment. 2 people on a sidewalk in Columbus, Ohio, on a Wednesday afternoon, who had nothing in common except a grocery store and what had happened in it. "Call your father." She looked at him. "Today," he said. "Not Sunday." "Today," she nodded. "Okay," she said. She looked like she meant it. "Go on," he said. "I'm slow. You don't want to walk at my pace." She almost smiled. "Are you sure you're—" "I'm fine, Ruth," he said. "I've been fine before and I'll be fine again." She nodded. She turned around. She walked back toward the parking lot. Walter watched her go. He thought about Marcus, about Sunday at 7 p.m., about what he was going to say. He got home at 2:40. He put the groceries away. Bread in the drawer, soup in the cabinet, tuna next to the soup, orange juice in the refrigerator, apple in the bowl on the counter, The ceramic bowl Eleanor had bought at a craft fair in 1987, and that still lived on the counter because Walter had decided some things stayed where they were. He made soup. Not the canned soup he'd bought. He'd saved that. He made the other kind. The kind Eleanor had made on Wednesdays when he came home from work. Chicken broth. Whatever vegetables were in the refrigerator. The specific unhurried process of making something warm when the day had been cold in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. He made it from memory. He'd learned it after Eleanor. He was still learning it. He sat at the kitchen table. He ate. He thought about the store, about Craig coming back with the $10, about Diane's face when he'd said, "I need to give it," about James closing register 5 without a word, about Ruth on the sidewalk saying, "I should have done something," with the specific honesty of someone deciding who they were going to be going forward. He thought about Thomas Reeves, about what Thomas had said afterward, not that day, days later, when Walter had tried to thank him. "Don't thank me," Thomas had said. "Just don't waste it." Walter had spent 55 years trying not to waste it. Most days he thought he was doing okay. Today, he thought he was doing okay. He washed his bowl. He dried it. He put it back in the cabinet. He went to the living room. He sat in the chair by the window. Eleanor's chair, technically, the one with the better light for reading, which Walter had claimed after she died, not because he read much, but because the light was good, and the chair held her shape in a way that still, 11 years later, felt like something. He sat. He looked at the window, at the street, at the ordinary Wednesday afternoon of a neighborhood that didn't know what happened 4 blocks away and didn't need to. He thought about Sunday, about Marcus calling at 7 p.m., about what he'd say. He hadn't decided yet. He'd know when Marcus asked. Marcus always asked the right question. Eleanor had said that about Marcus since he was 7 years old. "That boy asks the right questions," she'd say. "He gets it from you." Walter had never agreed. He thought Marcus got it from Eleanor. He still thought that. He sat in her chair by the window and thought about what she would say about today. She would say, "You stood still, Walter." He would say, "Yes." She would say, "And look what happened." He would say, "Yes." She would say, "It's always worth standing still." He'd say, "I know." She'd say, "So why do you keep being surprised?" And he wouldn't have a good answer for that. He never had a good answer for that. He sat in her chair. He watched the street. He waited for Sunday. The rest of the shift was normal. That was the thing she hadn't expected. She'd expected something, a conversation with Craig that went badly, a formal write-up, the specific institutional consequence of doing something outside the manual without permission. She'd closed her register without being asked. She'd left her line. She'd put 73 cents on a belt that wasn't hers. In 2 years, she'd never done anything like that. She'd expected to pay for it. Instead, she'd gotten a coffee from James and a $5 bill from a stranger. And Craig had come to her register at 4:30 and said something that sounded like the beginning of doing better. She'd gone home at 6. Normal exit. Clocked out. Said goodbye to Patricia, who was finishing a closing shift. Walked to her car in the employee lot. She sat in the car for a minute. She thought about what had happened, not analyzing it, sitting with it. The way you sat with something when you needed to understand not the mechanics of it, but the meaning of it. She'd done a thing. Other people had done a thing. And a 79-year-old man had walked out with his bread and his soup and his tuna and his orange juice and his apple. That was the whole thing. That was everything. She called her mother on the drive home. Not because she'd planned to. She talked to her mother on Sundays. That was the rhythm. The call that happened because it happened and would keep happening until it stopped, which she tried not to think about. She called on a Wednesday because she needed to tell someone. Her mother picked up on the second ring with the specific slightly alarmed energy of a parent who received a midweek call and immediately assumed the worst. "Dee, you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom," she said. "Something happened at work. Good something or bad something?" Diane thought about it. "I don't know yet," she said. "I think good, but I'm still figuring out what kind." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Tell me," she said. So Diane told her. Not the policy details, not Craig's title or the exact sequence of events. The shape of it, an old man. A card that had expired, 73 cents, a line of people watching. And you closed your register, her mother said. Yes, Diane said. Without asking, her mother said. Yes, Diane said. Her mother was quiet. Your grandmother would have done that, she said. Diane looked at the road. She hadn't thought about her grandmother. Her grandmother, Ida, 81, gone 4 years, had been the person in every room who saw what needed doing and did it before anyone else had finished deciding whether it needed doing. Not because she was bold, because she had a very low tolerance for watching something wrong continue when she could stop it. She'd said once, "The thing about waiting to see if someone else will do it is that someone else is always waiting too." Diane had forgotten that. Or not forgotten, filed it in the place where things went that you weren't ready to use yet. She'd been ready today. "I miss her," Diane said. "I know," her mother said. "I just closed a register," Diane said. "Yes," her mother said. "And someone else saw you do it and closed theirs. And someone else saw that and closed theirs." She paused. "That's not just closing a register." Diane drove. She thought about James, about the click of register 5, about Patricia, about the sequential sound of lights going off. "I was scared," Diane said. "I know," her mother said. "Not of Craig specifically," she said, "of standing there alone, in the gap." "But you stood there," her mother said. "For about 1 second," Diane said. "1 second is enough," her mother said. "The second is the whole thing. Everything after the second is just everything after." Diane thought about that, about the gap between the decision and the consequence, about 1 second of standing there before James closed register 5. Her mother was right. 1 second was the whole thing. She got home at 6:40. Apartment on the 3rd floor. 1 bedroom. The specific, organized smallness of someone who had learned to make a limited space feel intentional. She made dinner. Rice and chicken, the Tuesday leftover, reheated, the specific pragmatism of someone budgeting carefully at 22. She ate at the kitchen table. She thought about the $5 in her apron pocket. She'd brought the apron home by accident, still wearing it. When she walked out, which she'd never done before, which told her something about the state of her head when she left. She took the 5 out. She looked at it. For the next one, the woman hadn't said her name. Diane hadn't asked. She'd just pressed the 5 into Diane's hand and said those 3 words and walked out. Diane thought about what that meant. Not philosophically, practically. The next one, there would be one. Maybe not at Fresh Mart. Maybe not a veteran's card. Maybe not 73 cents. But there would be a moment, the specific recurring kind of moment that happened in every workplace, every grocery store, every line of people waiting, when someone was being made smaller than they should be, and the question would be, what do you do? She knew now what she did. She hadn't known before today, or she'd known and hadn't been sure she'd actually do it. Now she was sure. That was the $5. Not money. Certainty. She thought about James before she went to sleep. Not romantically. James was 58 and had been at Fresh Mart since before she was in middle school, and their relationship was entirely professional and entirely characterized by the approximately 400 words he'd said to her in 2 years. She thought about him because of what he'd done. He'd closed register 5. He hadn't paid anything, hadn't spoken to Craig, hadn't made a speech. He'd just closed his register. And in closing it, he'd done the thing she understood now was the harder thing. Not the first thing, the second thing. The thing that said, "You are not standing here alone." She thought about what that had cost him. 14 years at Fresh Mart. A manager who had authority over his schedule, his hours, his continued employment. A risk that was real. He'd closed the register anyway. She'd wanted to ask him about it on his break. She hadn't. Some things you didn't ask about. Some things you just recognized and carried. She turned off the light. She thought about her grandmother. About the thing about waiting to see if someone else will do it is that someone else is always waiting too. She'd stopped waiting today. She was going to keep not waiting. She went to sleep. James was at his kitchen table at 9:15. His wife, Carolyn, 55, a nurse at Ohio State, The specific practical love of two people who had been together long enough to need very few words was doing paperwork at the other end of the table. He was reading the paper, or trying to. He'd been on the same paragraph for 10 minutes. "You're somewhere else," Carolyn said without looking up. "Thinking," he said. "About work," she said. "About something that happened at work," he said. She looked up. He told her. Not the whole thing, the shape of it. The old man, the 73 cents, the young cashier who had closed her register. "And you closed yours," Carolyn said. "Yes," he said. Without being asked, she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at him. "Good," she said. "Just that." "You're not worried about Craig?" he said. "Are you?" she said. He thought about it. "No, not really." "Then I'm not," she said. She went back to her paperwork. James went back to the paper. He got through the paragraph this time. He thought about Diane before he fell asleep. About 22 years old, closing a register in a store where everyone else was watching and waiting. He'd watched too. For about 15 seconds. He wasn't proud of the 15 seconds. He was okay with what came after. 14 years at Freshmart had taught him one thing above everything else. Most people in most moments wanted to do the right thing. They just needed to see someone do it first. Diane had done it first. He'd made sure she didn't have to do it alone. That was all. That was enough. He turned off his light. He went to sleep. He came in early, not unusual. Craig came in early, most days, the specifically anxious punctuality of someone who felt that being in the building before his shift started was a form of control over a job that often felt like it was controlling him. But Thursday was different. Thursday, he came in at 6:15 and went straight to his office and sat at his desk and didn't do the thing he usually did first. Check the overnight inventory report, review the schedule, respond to the 3 or 4 emails from corporate that had accumulated since closing. He just sat. He'd been sitting with Wednesday since he'd left the building. Not with anger. He wasn't angry. He didn't have a right to be angry. What had happened was not something that had been done to him. It was something he had done and then something that had happened in response to what he'd done, and the response had been correct. That was the word he kept coming back to. Correct. Not kind, not forgiving, not even particularly gentle. Correct. Diane had been correct. James had been correct. Patricia and the others correct. And Walter had been correct when he'd said can't or won't. 2 words. Craig had been thinking about those 2 words since Wednesday afternoon. Can't or won't. He'd said can't, he'd meant won't. And Walter had seen that immediately. 79 years old, and he'd seen it in the time it took Craig to finish the sentence. Craig had been thinking about what that meant, about what it said about him, that a stranger had seen through him that fast, and he hadn't come to any comfortable conclusions. He called corporate at 8, not his regional manager, the policy team, the specific department that existed to answer questions about the specific policies that the stores were supposed to be enforcing. A woman named Linda answered. "Freshmart policy," she said. "This is Craig Mullins," he said. "Store manager, Columbus Carpenter Street. I have a question about the Veterans Discount Program." "Sure," Linda said. "When a veteran's discount card expires," he said, "what's the notification process? Does the customer get told?" A pause. "The card has an expiration date printed on it," Linda said. "Does the customer get notified before it expires?" Another pause. Longer. "I'd have to check on that," Linda said. "Please do," Craig said. "I'll hold." He held for 4 minutes. Linda came back. "So currently the notification process for expiring veterans discount cards is..." She stopped. "There isn't one. The date is on the card. So a 79-year-old veteran who's been using his card every week for 6 months has no way of knowing it's going to expire except by reading the date on the card," Craig said. Silence. "That's correct," Linda said. "I'd like to flag that," Craig said. Formally. "You can submit a request through the I'm submitting it now," Craig said. Verbally. "I'd like you to note this call and flag it for the policy team. Veterans discount card expiration notification. It should be automatic. Email, text, mail, however we contact customers. 30 days out at minimum." Linda was quiet. "I can note that," she said. "Thank you," Craig said. "And one more thing." "Yes?" Grace period, Craig said. For cases where the card expires and the customer doesn't know. 30-day grace period minimum. The customer can renew without penalty and without losing the discount in the interim. That's a larger policy change, Linda said. I know, Craig said. Noted anyway. He hung up. He looked at his desk. He didn't feel good about the call exactly. He felt like it was the right size of thing for what had happened. Not enough, but not nothing. He walked the floor at 9. He did this every morning, the specific managerial survey of the store before it filled up, checking stock, checking displays, the visual inventory of a space he'd been responsible for 3 months and was still learning. He walked past register 3. Diane was setting up, counting her drawer, organizing her space, the methodical preparation of someone who took the work seriously enough to start it right. She looked up when he passed. He stopped. I called corporate this morning, he said. Policy team. Flagged the veteran's card notification issue. She looked at him. They're going to review it, he said. Okay, she said. I asked for a 30-day grace period too, he said, for cards that expire without notification. She looked at him for a moment. Did they say yes? She said. They said they'd note it, he said. That's not yes, she said. No, he said. But it's in the system now. That's different from not being in the system. She nodded. Okay, she said. She went back to her drawer. He started to walk away. Craig, she said. He turned. What you did, she said. Coming back with the $10. That mattered. He looked at her. It shouldn't have gotten to $10, he said. It shouldn't have gotten to 73 cents. No, she said. But you came back. He looked at the register, at the light, at the line that would start forming in 20 minutes. I've been thinking about that, he said. About why I didn't just, in the moment. Why it took 47 seconds. What did you come up with? She said. He thought about it. Honestly, I was scared, he said, of doing something outside procedure, of what it would look like, of who was watching. Everyone was watching, Diane said. I know, he said. I figured that out. She looked at him. What made you go get the $10? She said. He thought about his grandfather. About 76 years old and a grocery store and the specific vulnerable arithmetic of a fixed income and a weekly shop. He almost said that. He said something else instead, something more true. I didn't want to be the kind of person who didn't, he said. Diane looked at him. She nodded. Okay, she said. She went back to her drawer. He walked the rest of the floor. James came in at 10. His shift started at 10. He was there at 9:58 because James Whitfield had been there at 9:58 for 14 years, and that was not going to change. He clocked in. He walked to register 5. He started setting up. Craig was coming back from the produce section. Their paths crossed near the deli counter. Craig stopped. James stopped. They looked at each other. James, Craig said. Craig, James said. A pause. The specific charged pause of two people who had been in the same significant moment and were now deciding how to be in the same ordinary moment. I talked to corporate, Craig said. About the veterans card. James looked at him. Flagged it for policy review, Craig said. Notification system. Grace period. James was quiet for a moment. Good. Not thank you for telling me. Not I appreciate that. Not good job. Just good. Craig nodded. James walked to register 5. Craig went back to his office. At 11:15, a man came in. 70s. Methodical shopper. The specific, unhurried pace of someone who knew exactly what he needed and was getting it without detour. He went to the bread aisle. He went to the canned goods. He went to the produce section and picked up an apple. He got in Diane's line. She scanned his items. Bread, soup, tuna, orange juice, apple. He handed her a card. She looked at it. Veterans discount. Expired 2 weeks ago. She looked at him. At the card. She scanned it. She applied the discount manually. The override she'd asked James to show her how to do at 9:15 that morning. The total came up. The man looked at the screen. He looked at her. Discount applied, he said. Yes, she said. Cards expired, he said. I know, she said. We're working on the notification system. In the meantime, we're honoring expired veterans cards. He looked at her. Who said that? He said. She thought about it. I did, she said. He looked at her for a moment. He paid. He took his bag. He started toward the exit. He turned around. "Thank you," he said. "Have a good day," she said. He walked out. Diane looked at register 5. James had seen it. He was looking at his own register. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. She turned back to her line. Next customer. At 2 o'clock, Craig came out of his office. He walked to register 3. "The override you did," he said. "For the expired veterans card." She looked at him. "I know I didn't ask." "It's fine," he said. She looked at him. "I'm going to send an email to the team," he said, "while we're waiting on corporate. Expired veterans cards. Apply the discount. Note the override. Flag for renewal." He paused. "It's not policy yet, but it's what we're doing here." She looked at him. "Okay," she said. He went back to his office. She watched him go. She thought about Craig standing in the store yesterday for 47 seconds. She thought about him coming back with the $10. She thought about him calling corporate at 8 a. She thought about it's not policy yet, but it's what we're doing here. That was different from yesterday, not fixed. Different. And different was how things moved. Not all at once. One $10 bill at a time. One phone call at a time. One override at a time. One Craig deciding who he wanted to be at a time. Marcus called at 7 Central Time. 9 o'clock, his time in Denver. The call that came every Sunday the way the sun came every morning. Not because it had to, because it did, because that was what it did. Walter was in Eleanor's chair when the phone rang. He'd been there since 6:30. Not waiting, he didn't wait for the calls. He sat in the chair on Sunday evenings because that was what he did on Sunday evenings, and the call happened to arrive while he was doing it. He picked up on the second ring. "Dad," Marcus said. "Marcus," he said. The specific settled quality of two people who had been talking on the phone every Sunday for 5 years and had long since moved past the part where they needed to figure out how to talk to each other. "How was your week?" Marcus said. Walter looked at the window, at the street, at the ordinary Sunday evening of a neighborhood going quiet. "Interesting," he said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He knew his father. "What happened?" he said. Walter told him. "Not the whole thing, the shape of it. Wednesday morning. Fresh Mart, the card, the 73 cents. Craig saying policy is policy." He told him about standing still. He told him about Diane, about the 73 cents on the belt, about I need to give it. He told him about James, about the click of register 5, about Patricia, about the others, about Craig coming back with the $10, about can't or won't. He told him about Ruth on the sidewalk, about call your father, not Sunday, today. Marcus listened. He was a good listener, the specific, active quiet of someone who was receiving what you were saying rather than waiting for you to finish so they could say what they'd already decided to say. Eleanor had said that about Marcus since he was 7. Walter had never told Marcus that. He thought about telling him now. He didn't. Some things you just kept. When Walter finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. The good quiet. 73 cents, Marcus said. 73 cents, Walter said. And she just closed her register, Marcus said, without asking, Walter said. Without asking, Marcus said. Another quiet. Dad, Marcus said. Yeah, Walter said. I'm going to send you some money, Marcus said. Walter looked at the window. I don't need money, Marcus, he said. I know, Marcus said. But I want to, Walter said. Yeah, Marcus said. What I need, Walter said, is not something you can send. Marcus was quiet. What do you need? He said. Walter thought about the week, about Wednesday, about Diane putting 73 cents on a belt, about James closing register 5 without a word, about Craig standing for 47 seconds and then walking to his office and coming back with $10, about Ruth saying, I should have done something on the sidewalk, about Thomas Reeves, about don't waste it, about Eleanor, about sitting in her chair every Sunday evening, not because he was waiting, but because some things stayed where they were. I've got what I need, he said. What's that? Marcus said. Walter looked at the street, at the house with the blue shutters, at the corner where the oak tree had been, at the ordinary specific geography of a life lived in one place long enough to know what was missing from it. People who still know what 73 cents is worth, he said. Marcus was quiet. That's not an answer, Dad, he said. It is, Walter said. You just have to think about it. Marcus thought about it. Are you okay? He said. Yes, Walter said. Better than Wednesday morning. That's not hard, Marcus said. No, Walter said, but it counts. They talked for an hour. Not about Wednesday, about other things. The specific accumulated things of a week. Marcus's kids. The older one, James, named for no one in particular, which was its own kind of name, had started soccer. The younger one, Nina, had said something at dinner that Marcus couldn't stop thinking about. What did she say? Walter said. She said, Dad, why do people have to earn kindness? Walter was quiet. She's 6, Marcus said. Where did that come from? Walter said. I don't know, Marcus said. She just said it, out of nowhere. We were eating dinner. Walter thought about that. About Nina at 6 years old asking why kindness had to be earned. About the specific, uncluttered clarity of a child who hadn't yet been taught that it did. She's right, Walter said. I know, Marcus said. That's why I can't stop thinking about it. What did you say to her? Walter said. I didn't know what to say, Marcus said. I said, that's a really good question, Nina. And then I changed the subject. Walter almost smiled. You should have said it doesn't, Walter said. Kindness doesn't have to be earned. Some people forget that. Your job is to remember it. Marcus was quiet. That's what I should have said, he said. You'll get another chance, Walter said. 6-year-olds ask the same question many times. Did I? Marcus said. You asked everything many times, Walter said. It was exhausting and wonderful. Marcus laughed, real laugh. The laugh Walter had heard since Marcus was 3 years old, and that still, at 51, sounded like the same laugh, unguarded, surprised by itself. Eleanor had loved that laugh. Walter did too. Dad, Marcus said. Yeah, Walter said. The girl, Marcus said. Diane. Yes, Walter said. Does she know what she did? He said. Walter thought about it. I think she knows what she did, he said. I'm not sure she knows what it meant. What did it mean? Marcus said. Walter looked at Eleanor's chair, at the ceramic bowl on the counter in the kitchen, visible through the doorway, at the accordion folder he hadn't opened in 11 years, at the specific accumulated evidence of a life shared and then continued alone, and then Wednesday, briefly, unexpectedly, returned to something that felt like the opposite of alone. It meant, Walter said, that she saw me. Marcus was quiet. Not the 73 cents, Walter said. Not the card. Me. He paused. I've been going to that store every Wednesday for 6 months and I've been another customer. Wednesday, she saw me. And that matters, Marcus said. At 79, Walter said. Yes, that matters. Marcus was quiet for a long time. I'm going to come visit, he said. Next month. I've been saying next month for, I know, Walter said. I mean it this time, Marcus said. I know, Walter said. You don't believe me, Marcus said. I believe you, Walter said. Next month is fine. And if it's the month after that, it's also fine. Dad, Marcus, Walter said. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that, Marcus said. Walter smiled. Fair, he said. Marcus laughed again. That's what your doctor says, Marcus said. She's a smart woman, Walter said. They said goodnight at 8:15. The specific, unhurried goodbye of two people who knew the call would come again next Sunday and didn't need to make this one last longer than it needed to last. I love you, Dad, Marcus said. I love you, Walter said. Give my love to Nina first, Marcus said. Alphabetical, Walter said. James then Nina, Marcus said. No, Walter said. J comes before N, but Nina asked the better question this week. Marcus laughed. Nina first, he said. Good boy, Walter said. He hung up. He sat in Eleanor's chair. The call was done. The street was quiet. The house was quiet. He thought about Nina. Why do people have to earn kindness? He thought about Diane. About 73 cents. About I need to give it. He thought about Thomas Reeves. About don't waste it. He thought about Eleanor. About what she would say. She would say, you see, Walter. He would say, see what? She would say, people. You see people. He would say, sometimes. She would say, more than sometimes. He would say, it costs something. She would say, yes. He would say, is it worth it? She would not answer that directly. She never answered that directly. She would just look at him the way she looked at him. And he would have his answer. He sat in her chair. He looked at the street. He thought, yes, it was worth it. It had always been worth it. He came in at 8:15. Same time. Same 4 blocks. Same bag. The house with the blue shutters. The corner where the oak tree had been. The specific, familiar sequence of a route that had been his for 6 months and felt, this Wednesday, slightly different from last Wednesday in the way that places felt different after something significant had happened in them. Not different like changed. Different like known. He saw Craig first. Craig was at the front of the store, not the entrance, near the customer service desk, talking to someone on the phone, with the specific, focused energy of a manager who had something he needed to resolve and was resolving it. He saw Walter come in. He held up one finger, the universal signal for one moment, and finished the call. "Mr. Gaines," he said. "Craig," Walter said. Craig reached under the customer service desk. He put a new veteran's discount card on the counter. "Renewed," he said. "Good for 2 years." And he paused. "I talked to corporate. They're working on a notification system. 30 days before expiration, automatic. Email or mail, customer's choice." Walter looked at the card. "When does that start?" he said. "They said 90 days, Craig said. "I'm pushing for 60. Walter picked up the card. He looked at it. At the expiration date, 2 years out, a date so far in the future it felt almost abstract. He put it in his wallet, behind his driver's license, behind his Medicare card, where the old one had been. "Thank you," he said. "Mr. Gaines," Craig said. Walter looked at him. "I'm sorry," Craig said, "for last week. The way I handled it." He said it the way people said things they'd been practicing. Not rehearsed, prepared. "You deserved better than what I gave you." Walter looked at him. At 34 years old, standing behind a customer service desk on a Wednesday morning, saying the thing that needed saying. "Yes," Walter said. "I did. Not absolution, not anger. Just yes, and now we move." Craig nodded. Walter walked into the store. He got his bread first, the soup, then the tuna, then the orange juice. He was in the produce section looking at apples when he heard his name. "Mr. Gaines." He turned. Diane, not at her register, on a break, a bottle of water in her hand, the specific, slightly rumpled look of someone in the middle of a shift. "Deanne," he said. She looked at him. She looked like she had something to say and wasn't sure how to say it. He waited. He was good at waiting. "I've been thinking about last week," she said. "So have I," he said. "I wanted to." She stopped. "I don't know what I wanted. I just wanted to say something to you." "Say it," he said. She looked at the apples. "My grandmother had a saying," she said. She said, "The thing about waiting to see if someone else will do it is that someone else is always waiting too." Walter looked at her. "She sounds like a wise woman," he said. "She was," Diane said. "She's been gone 4 years." She paused. "I thought about her a lot last week, about what she would have done." "What would she have done?" Walter said. "The same thing," Diane said. "Faster." Walter looked at her. Something that wasn't quite a smile moved across his face. "She sounds like someone I would have liked," he said. "She would have liked you," Diane said. They stood in the produce section. Two people who had been strangers 8 days ago and were now something that didn't have a name, but was distinctly not strangers. "Can I ask you something?" Diane said. "Ask," he said. "When you were standing there," she said, "at the register, when Craig said what he said," she paused. "Were you scared?" Walter thought about it, the honest consideration. "No," he said. "No?" she said. "I've been scared before," he said, "of things that deserved the fear. Craig and 73 cents didn't make the list." She looked at him. "What did you feel?" she said. He thought about it. About standing at the register with his bread and his soup and his tuna and his orange juice and his apple. About can't or won't. About not tired, he said. Mostly tired. 79 years old and still having to stand still in grocery stores to get what I paid for. Diane was quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't have to be sorry," he said. "You closed your register." "I should have closed it sooner," she said. "Yes," he said. "But you closed it." She looked at the apples. He looked at the apples. He picked one up, the same kind he always bought. He put it in his bag. "Diane," he said. "Yes," she said. "My son called Sunday," he said. "I told him about last week." "What did he say?" she said. "He asked if I was okay," Walter said. "Are you?" she said. I told him I've got what I need, he said. People who still know what 73 cents is worth. She looked at him. What does that mean? She said. He looked at her. It means, he said, that what you did wasn't about money. It was about whether a person gets seen. He paused. You saw me. That's what 73 cents was worth. She was very still. He understood the stillness. Some things needed a moment before you could put them anywhere. He gave her the moment. I have shopping to do, he said. You have a shift to finish. She nodded. Mr. Gaines, she said. Walter. She looked at him. Walter, she said. Thank you for coming back. He looked at her. I come every Wednesday, he said. I know, she said. Thank you anyway. He walked toward the registers. She watched him go. He got in James's line. Not because it was shorter. Register 5 had 4 people. Register 3 was empty. He got in James's line because James was in it. James looked at him when he stepped up. He didn't say anything, neither did Walter. James scanned the items: bread, soup, tuna, orange juice, apple. Walter handed him the new card. James scanned it. The discount applied. The total came up. Walter paid. James put the items in the bag. He handed it across. Their hands overlapped for a moment on the bag. 1 second. Maybe less. Wednesday, James said. Not a question, a statement. The specific acknowledgement of a man who had been watching the same person come in every Wednesday for 6 months and was noting that Wednesday had continued. Wednesday, Walter said. James nodded. Walter picked up his bag. He walked toward the exit. He passed register 3. Diane was back. She was scanning items for a customer, focused, efficient, the automatic rhythm of someone who knew the work. She didn't look up. He didn't stop. Some things didn't need a scene. He walked through the door. 4 blocks home, the house with the blue shutters, the corner where the oak tree had been. He walked. He thought about Eleanor, about what she would say. She would say, you went back, he would say. I go every Wednesday. She would say, I know. But this Wednesday mattered. He would say, yes. She would say, they all matter, Walter. He would say, I know. She would say, do you? He would think about that. He thought about it now. On the 2nd block, between the house with the blue shutters and the corner where the oak tree had been. He thought about Thomas Reeves, about Don't Waste It. He thought about Diane, about I Need to Give It. He thought about Nina, about why do people have to earn kindness. He thought about Craig saying, I didn't want to be the kind of person who didn't. He thought about James closing register 5 without a word. He thought about Ruth on the sidewalk saying, I came back. He thought about all the people in all the moments who had chosen, not perfectly, not immediately, not without the 47 seconds or the 15 seconds or the 14 months of driving home with something sitting on them like weight, but chosen. Do they all matter? Yes, he thought, yes, they all mattered. That was the whole thing. That was what 73 cents had bought, not the bread, not the soup, not even the dignity, though that too. The reminder that people were still choosing, every Wednesday, in every line, in every register that could be closed or kept open. People were still choosing, and that was enough to keep walking, past the blue shutters, past the corner where the oak tree had been. Home. The following Wednesday, Diane brought flowers. Not for the store, for the break room. A small bunch, yellow, the kind that came wrapped in plastic from the grocery section that she walked past every day and had never bought before. She put them in a cup of water on the break room table. No note. James saw them when he came in for his shift. He looked at them for a moment. He went to his register. Walter came in at 8:15, same time. Same 4 blocks. Same bag. He got his bread, his soup, his tuna, his orange juice, his apple. He got in Diane's line. She scanned his items. She scanned his card. Discount applied. She put his things in the bag. She handed it across. Same time next week, she said. Not a question. Same time next week, he said. He picked up his bag. He walked toward the door. He passed register 5. James was already with a customer. He didn't look up. Walter didn't stop. Outside the air was cold. November in Columbus. The specific gray of a city moving into winter without apology. He started walking, past the blue shutters, toward the corner where the oak tree had been. He thought about Eleanor, about Thomas, about Diane saying, I need to give it, about Nina asking, why do people have to earn kindness? About Craig standing at a customer service desk with a new card and an apology that cost him something. About James closing a register without a word. About all of it. About 73 cents. He walked. Subscribe if you're new. Share this tonight with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, who saw you when you needed to be seen? I read everyone. See you in the next story. The oak tree had been gone 5 years. He still knew exactly where it was.